Hello, welcome everyone. I see folks coming on to the webinar, so thank you for joining us. We'll get started here in just a moment. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on our webinar today with CEO Vivek Mehta. Now, am I saying your name correctly, Vivek?
Almost. It's Vivek with an A sound.
With an A. Say it again for me.
Vivek.
Vivek.
Yep. The way I get people to remember it is it's Vivek. It rhymes with heartache, like the one you have when I leave the room.
Oh, that's right. I'd say that was cheesy, but I don't know you well enough to tell you that it's cheesy.
It's definitely cheesy.
Thank you, everyone. We're so glad that you're here. Let me share my screen, and then we won't do a whole lot of fancy dancy screen showing, but just a little bit. All right. Oops, it didn't show, did it? Try that again. All right. Can you see our the deck there? Vivek, everyone? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think you guys can see it. Just want to say thank you for joining us. Today's conversation with Vivek. Now I'm going to really have a hard time. Vivek Mehta is the CEO of Weeve, and our conversation today is crisis communication and employee feedback. How to create the rally effect your company needs. I know that is a very timely topic, and our sponsors today, I want to share with you guys, we are very grateful to have sponsorship for our virtual summit. We would not have been able to put this on without the Whitmarsh Consulting Group. David Whitmarsh and his team are a group of distinctively talented individuals who focus on human resource information technology consulting and multi-channel marketing. I also want to say thank you so much to Insperity HR that makes a difference. Insperity is one of our sponsors and has graciously provided a free HR financial analysis report and debrief for any members and participants that join our virtual summit over the month of April. Just a quick shout out about this. This is actually something incredibly valuable. When Insperity said that they would do this, I kind of pushed back and I said, are you sure? Because this is going to take them anywhere from 3 to 10 hours, depending on your organization, to deliver that analysis and that confidential report in a one-on-one debrief. And the truth is that not everyone is a good fit for their services. And I said, are you sure? Not everyone's a good fit. And they said, absolutely, this is how we're giving back. We're happy to, because we know that a lot of HR departments are having to, throw out their plans for 2020 and begin again. So real quickly, Turnkey Coaching Solutions is in fact also offering buy one, get one virtual training on relevant topics such as new to managing your remote workforce, business continuity, and the like. And then later in our webinar today, I am going to also share with you guys a name your own price outplacement coaching package. We know that free means not very valuable. So it's not free, but it is the next best thing. And unfortunately, we are living in a time where outplacement is going to have to be on the agenda for our HR friends. So my name is Anisa Aven, and I am the CEO of Turnkey Coaching and Development Solutions. We are a learning and coaching and learning services provider, coaching, training, and what have you. And when I went to my team this 10 days ago, and said, our clients are in trouble, all of us are in trouble. What can we do to focus on something that matters right now? Something where we can give back instead of sit and wallow in, oh my gosh, our world is turned upside down. And I reached out to a lot of our speakers, including Vivek, and instantaneously experts showed up saying, I'm in. What can I do to help? Where do I need to go? Show me when, show me where. And so right now we have more than 40 speakers at our leading in a crisis actionable business and HR strategies. We have another 20 or 30 that I haven't had a chance to vet, make sure that they're experts, etc., that want to participate. And so please do check out the Leading in a Crisis Actionable Business and HR Strategies for navigating crisis and change on a regular basis to check out the other talks. So today, very, very grateful, Vivek, that you're with us. He's a co-founder and CEO of Weave, an empathetic AI platform that helps people, leaders, to build happy and high-performing teams. So there's multiple reasons why this is an exciting presentation today. And Vivek, I want you to share a little bit more about yourself. But before we do that, I want you to know that when I introduced one of my team members, Paige, to your site and what we were going to do with you, she said, "That's the coolest thing ever." And I said, "Really? What's so cool about it?" She said, "It's like artificial intelligence, but it's like they have a brain asking me how I'm feeling and what I'm doing." I just think it, and that to me was in a nutshell what your technology does in employee engagement. That is, okay, can I use this word, revolutionary? I mean, is that too far? Did I go overboard there?
I'll take it.
Excellent. So tell us who you are. What makes you the expert? What are we going to learn today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Vivek. Like Anisa mentioned, I'm co-founder CEO of Weave. So we help companies to build happy, high-performing teams, and that's done through what we call an empathetic AI colleague. Her name is Kim. She chats with employees basically to understand their issues and needs, and then we escalate those issues up to the people that can resolve them the fastest. The really cool thing about this empathetic chat experience is that it's not like your typical one-off survey. It is an ongoing conversation and an intelligent conversation. So we can follow up and deep dive to the specific issues that an individual is having. And we can also crowdsource suggestions for improvement. So then when we deliver insights to a manager or to HR, to leadership, they get not only these are the specific issues I need to be focusing on, but also this is the start of an action plan that my employees have helped me develop.
Even as you're saying it, you see me shaking my head because it's pretty remarkable. And I know that we're going to have an opportunity to talk even more about the technology. But one of the things that I know that you and I wanted to talk about today is specifically how to keep your fingers on the pulse of what's happening without sending some, "Hey, employee, would you please fill out my engagement survey? Because I really care." I mean, that's just not going to, sorry, it came out so sarcastic, but that's just not going to work in this environment. And yet HR can't go to every single employee and say, "I need to hold your hand. Are you okay?" And yet they want to. So where are we today, and what's the solution?
Absolutely. So that was the big focus of Weave, which is we know that we need empathy and understanding, but how do we uphold those ideals at scale? And it really gets at the heart of like, what is empathy? This is probably a term that you're hearing a lot these days when you're looking through, okay, we're dealing with COVID-19 stuff. How do we communicate with employees with empathy? What does that mean? At We've kind of tried to figure out what does empathy look like, and then how do we make that into a process that can be done through AI, while also ultimately being supported by humans where it matters. So what we've kind of figured out, the most important pieces is from an employee perspective, empathy is 1, someone cares enough to ask about my thoughts. 2, they have understood my thoughts, and they've proved that by showing that they've asked the right follow-up questions, they've empathized with me, or they provided me a path forward for an issue that I'm facing. 3, I'm being kept in the loop. It's not a black box. I'm not voicing my opinions and then I have no idea what's happening with it. I know every step of this is how my input is being taken into account. Even if it's not going to directly lead to exactly what I'm asking for, I know what's happening with the feedback that I provide. And finally, this is not a one-off interaction. I shouldn't feel like, oh, I forgot to say this one thing this one time and I've lost my chance. It should be an ongoing conversation, an iterative process where the employee feels really comfortable giving feedback at any time, and the leaders know how to listen to that feedback and how to be responsive to it.
So, I'm going to ask about, how does artificial intelligence respond? I mean, and of course I think of, Siri. Sometimes I'm hanging out and Siri will just say, "What's that?" Which helps me know, yeah, she's pretty empathetic. tell me a little bit about what you're finding right now in regards to your clients' needs and in regards to what companies are needing to do to listen and listen differently than a typical, engagement survey, for example.
Yeah. So this kind of goes into the concept of like, what is survey etiquette right now? Like, you want to make sure that you're hearing the voice of your employees, but also you don't want to be peppering them with like your standard employee engagement survey that no one cares about right now. So the number one thing is you are asking the questions that are most immediately relevant. So the kind of upside right now is that we know what everyone is going through at a high level. And so you know where to start off in terms of what feedback you want to get and what you want to find out about. The next piece of it is you have to know, or you have to communicate to employees how you're using what you're asking from them. So no one wants to engage in a survey and spend time if they don't understand why they're doing it. They're just going to ignore it. And people have so many more important things to think about right now. But if you can really clearly draw the line between, I'm asking you how you're dealing with the transition of work from home, how you think the company is doing with its health and safety guidelines or whatever, and this is what I'm going to do with your feedback, and I'm going to get back to you in 1 week's time and tell you exactly what we're doing about the collective response. That gets people to understand why you're doing this in the first place.
The difference there is not just pool communication, which
Mm-hmm.
is, one of the biggest weaknesses of a typical employee survey or employee communication method. Even good leaders right now that are communicating effectively and are sending out even videos from the executive team, this is what's going on, they're not able to pull information from other than those who have their ear. And then likewise, the other way too, even if they do pull the information through a survey or what have you, it's very difficult for HR to get their hands around, okay, we've made some decisions. Now, how do we make this immediately available? Oh no, we've got to schedule a town hall to get this out. So talk to me a little bit about the research behind why right now the instantaneous communication, the two-way communication is so critical, and communication during a crisis in particular, because I know that you have some data around that.
Mm-hmm. So listening and responding quickly is always important. It is critically important right now. There's a recent study that PwC did on how companies respond to global crisis, and they found that 40% of leaders are unable to gather data quickly and to make timely decisions. And it's primarily for two big reasons. One, they don't have a clear crisis communication strategy. And two, they don't have a way to make sure that employees have received and understood the messages that they're creating. So yeah, I may have a town hall. Are people attending it? Once people attended, did they really understand what I was saying? Did they feel like they were being heard in that communication? I think those are some of the most common missteps that companies make. They feel like, okay, I've had this one webinar, I've done this one big email blast, and the message has been passed. But oftentimes, you don't know if employees really understood. And when you have that period where they don't understand, that's where confusion stems, that's where rumors come from, and that misinformation ultimately becomes external facing. And that's what's going to become a huge impact on your company.
That 40%, that's pretty big. And I don't remember the exact statistic, but I also know that a huge percentage of organizations were caught without any crisis plan at all. So that 40% is based on, we don't have a clear communication strategy, so to speak, right? Or,
yep.
And so I suspect those numbers are much bigger than even that PwC research. Tell me a little bit about, how is an employer supposed to manage this communication through furloughs and layoffs? And don't worry, folks, we'll be here tomorrow. And in fact, they're not. I mean, tell me about that.
Yeah. I mean, layoffs and furloughs suck, and you should not try to hide that fact. There's some obvious things to do, like don't get everyone on a Zoom call and mass fire them.
What you ought to know, got something to tell you.
Like be as uh, understanding and human as possible in that process. We all know that it sucks. Like I mentioned, the benefit that we have is that we're collectively going through an issue. So there is an inherent level of understanding that's built into it. But I'd say that the most important pieces are be extremely honest. If you don't know if you're going to be able to retain employees, be open about that fact and be extremely timely in your updates as you do find things out. You don't want people to kind of be hanging on to the idea of like, am I going to have a paycheck this week? Do I need to file for unemployment? Help them answer those questions as quickly as possible. Next, set your company up so that you are trusted post-crisis. You want to exit knowing that people felt you were honest, that you were understanding, and that your company that they want to work for, that they want to work with. Part of what you can do to help this is advocate for people that you're laying off or furloughing, whether that's an external communication, making it clear that like, hey, these are all really great people. I want to try and get them hired elsewhere. I'm not just letting them go because like they were bottom of the barrel. It can come through helping them answer unemployment questions or other logistical steps, but being present in that interaction and not being like, well, I got to get rid of people. Let me just get them out of sight as quickly as possible. I would avoid doing that.
Good advice. Avoid doing that. The communication that's two-way with Weave. Tell me a little bit more about that empathy, about sharing through artificial intelligence, genuine compassion, because my mind tells me, I'm a little suspicious of that.
Yep. So, I mean, like empathy doesn't mean that the chatbot is going to listen to a complaint and be like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Right. It's going to ring as very hollow. And ultimately people know that they're talking to a bot. There is, I mean, it's a philosophical argument. Can a bot even really have empathy? But the bigger area that we're trying to focus on is it is a tool for you to be human where it counts. So what the bot can do is it can understand natural language. It can understand emotion. Obviously, everyone knows where the state of natural language technology is. We've all talked to Siri or Google Assistant. And so the role that the bot plays is being able to understand very specific things and ask the right follow-up questions, and then be able to engage employees in building solutions. So the bot will reach out to employees and say, hey, 30% of your peers are feeling really frustrated about our messaging platform that we use while we're working from home. What are your thoughts on what we could do about this? Do you have any ideas you want me to pass along? And so it becomes more of like a resource for employees where they know that if I talk to Kim, if I talk to the bot, then my voice is going to be heard and I'm going to see the immediate response. And so that's where the human element comes in, which is the most important piece, being responsive to that feedback. We have two main flows. We find that feedback tends to fall into two big buckets. One is things that can be addressed immediately. A example that we had was from a client of ours that's a hospital system. There's a night shift nurse that was going on a tirade because she was having to eat stale food left over from day shift. That is a very, very quick problem for the company to solve. And so they can message out immediately and be like, hey, we heard you. This is what we're doing about it. And Kim will kind of broadcast that on your behalf, making sure that that employee heard that message. The other big bucket is problems that are not quite as easy to solve, things that are ongoing that require deeper dives. And that's our crowdsourcing functionality. That's where Kim will check in with people and say, look, this is a problem that we know exists. We're working on resolving it, and we want your voice as part of that process. So it's being open that things are happening, something is going on behind the curtain, and we want to involve you in it. So that does two things. It reassures people that something's happening, their voice matters, and it gets you potential actions, crowdsources improvements that you may not have thought about before.
So how do I'm in HR and I've got this data, and ideally there's a lot of it. Tell me how I'm supposed to manage that. I mean, I I'm already overwhelmed. I'm already taxed with whatever we're going through, a lot. How am I supposed to manage this process?
Mhm. That was a huge focus area of ours. It does nothing to just dump more data on people's desks and be like, hey, I brought you all this data, do something about it.
Aren't you happy? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where a lot of the AI functionality comes in. The first piece is the back and forth that often happens between HR and an individual gets like that busy work almost gets done with the bot. So discovering what the problem is, following back to deep dive, trying to understand what solutions people want to see. We find that organizations spend upwards of a year in this back and forth process. With Weave, we tend to see that drop down to about 2 weeks on average.
Wait, really? 1 year to 2 weeks? That's pretty huge. Wow. Okay. Because I'm able to use the data that's there. I don't have to go back through and analyze it and figure it out and prioritize it in the same way that I would the data dump that I get from most communication surveys.
The big time suck in most employee engagement, employee feedback type platforms is the back and forth. So you're going to get data, it's great data, but it's not actionable yet. You have to go back and dive in some more, and that process repeats a couple of times till you understand the specific action that needs to take place. So we try to automate as much of that back and forth as possible, so that when you get the data, it is down to the root causes, the deep dive form. And then we help you break down that by using emotional analysis as well as topic recognition. So if you look at our dashboard, you'll literally see a sad face and then like, this is the topic area I need to focus on.
Wow. You know what? One of the things that I wanted to let folks know about is, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this towards the end, but you have created a special for this pandemic, so that organizations who need a long-term or even a temporary solution to quickly communicate and make sure that they're listening to their employees and make sure that they're expressing empathy at all levels, and your technology frankly gives them that capacity, and you are offering it. Please tell us the special that you've put together.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know the big pain point for a lot of organizations right now is, one, obviously COVID-19 response in general. What's the impact on your employees? What are their needs? And second, transition to work from home. So we've rolled out a bunch of free pulse tools for KMR chatbot, where you can start understanding what those problems are, really deep dive very quickly, and one easy dashboard not only see, okay, this is what my employees' thoughts are and what their issues and needs are, but this is how I can start to address them. It's a totally free offer. I believe Anisa will give the link later, but it's if you go to our site, weave.ai/here to help, you'll see it.
Beautiful. So I do have to say though, so I know I keep asking about the whole compassion and empathy thing, but tell me about fostering loyalty during this time. We know that organizations that are laying off employees, that's painful enough. But what we also know, the research shows that of the employees that you keep, 30% of them are already looking to see what's my next opportunity because it's not safe here.
Yep.
So it's critical for both of those situations are managed effectively, but it's really important for an organization who needs to stabilize to hear what's going on and to communicate with those employees. How can HR and leaders communicate to deal with that 30% that's already thinking, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
Fostering loyalty.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's an especially interesting question right now because we have to deal with it slightly differently. By and large, the most important piece of your communication strategy right now should be providing clarity and making sure that there's not confusion and misinformation that's spreading around. Your employees have kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy in terms of what they care about, which at the top is going to be financial, then like, I guess you can put financial safety kind of in one bucket, followed by logistical, how do I actually do my job now that things are changing, and then social / emotional. So those are all things that you need to be addressing in order to have trust of your team, kind of in order. And some of these specific things that you can do is have a communication strategy where you are regularly not only updating your company on what are the latest policies, what's the latest response, what is the impact on their job, are they going to continue to have a job, but you are incorporating in as close to real time as possible employee thoughts. And then every time you do another communication push, you're clearly addressing thoughts that you've just gotten. So it's not like I'm just tossing out a statement saying what we're doing, but it's very clear that there is an us mentality here, that we're trying to get through this as a team. Some of the other specific things that you can be doing right now is have a automated notification system, which is, depending on your company communication style, this might go out to email, it might go to Slack, it might go to SMS, a way for you to be doing these very rapid communications, but then also make sure all of that stuff lives in one singular source, so that if at any point someone has any questions, they know where to go in order to get things answered. When rumors, misinformation starts, when people don't know where to get answers and they start trying to find answers themselves or making up things on their own. Some of the other things that I'd recommend right now is communicate clearly your health and safety strategies. These are things that you can get from like the World Health Organization, other authorities, and talk through what your support policy is for people that get ill and that get sick, so that they know that the company's thought about what is going to happen, and I don't have to have this additional stress on top of already being sick and anxious. Yeah, that's about it.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about the way in which some of your clients are using this right now. And I'm also interested, and this might be two questions, but I'm also interested in hearing about a best practice, because I can imagine that if I'm not pushing enough communication, I'm pulling too much, I'm going to want to not engage anymore because I'm not hearing what I need to hear. And I just think you're pulling information, but you're not sharing with me enough about what's happening and the things that matter to me. So tell me a little bit about those best practices.
Yeah. So it largely has to do with having extremely fast iteration timelines. So normally we try to have those down to like less than 2 week cycles. So 2 weeks after an employee is given their feedback, they're hearing what impact that feedback has had. Now we're recommending it be much, much faster. So like a day or 2 days. And the way our clients are using Weave is, one, keep in mind what I mentioned before, the questions have to be relevant. Don't ask things that aren't relevant. So they'll have Kim go in and check in and ask about the specific kind of high level issues that they know employees are facing, and then can deep dive down to the specific items that employees are concerned about, and then respond ASAP, whether even if it's just to say, we heard you, this is what we're doing about it. I don't know what the result is yet, but someone is thinking about it. The other big thing that we're seeing is you're across the board going to see a huge drop in like survey response rates. But the important piece is that employees know the process exists when they need it. So there are so many important things that people are thinking about in their day-to-day right now that even if the survey is very relevant to them, it's not going to be top of mind. But when they have something that they want to have escalated, when they want to provide certain feedback, the process should be extremely clear. So you should really have two feedback mechanisms, or feedback mechanism that operates in two ways. One, which is going to be proactive asking from leadership, because employees are not going to come up to you by themselves right now. And then the other piece is the always available functionality. So if there's something someone's worried about, you haven't asked about it yet, they know that this one place exists. And if they do provide feedback there, it's going to be heard. Something's going to be done about it.
So tell me how, and someone who sees this two-way communication right now is critical, but perhaps they're having to make the case with others, leaders or executives that are in their minds making bigger decisions than just how to get feedback from our employees. You know, how are your clients making a case for why this is important right now?
Yeah. So really speaking, employees are probably the single biggest determinant in how fast your organization is going to recover post-crisis. They're who is going to be driving your narrative. They're the ones that can prevent confusion and panic. They're going to reassure your clients. They're going to protect and define the company image. So I think more leaders are becoming receptive to this fact. But if they're not, and you're not able to communicate that, there's so much other stuff going on. What we found to be really effective is micro feedback cycles that are happening at the team level. So even if the CEO is not being directly responsive to feedback, you know that your manager is listening and being responsive to what you're saying. And we find that 75% of people, like their association to a company and the reason why they would quit would be related to whether they trusted their manager or not. And so having that team level relationship is really important, especially if you're not able to push a larger company sized feedback cycle. But even if you can, you should still have that team level feedback loop.
So I want to say, the folks that are listening, how are you asking your employees what's going on? How are you pushing communications out about your strategy and your response and the safety of your employees? I'd like to get your feedback on that. And if you have any questions for Vivek, please put them in the chat box. Tell me a little more about, so employees know that the managers are listening, the managers, how might HR foster that level of commitment with those managers using the collective data, the data that comes in, and then help those managers be timely with their responses?
Yeah. By and large, it is about making the job easy for managers. Managers already have a full-time job that they're doing. And if you just go to them and be like, hey, this is something additional that you should take on, it's not going to become a priority. And so a big piece of it is having the predefined workflow and having the tools ready for managers to use so that it's as little effort as possible. We find that you primarily want to use your tools in order to set up for face-to-face interactions. So most managers want to have happy relationships with their teams. Good managers will be having one-on-ones with individuals, but where the struggles are is this face-to-face time often gets spent in trying to diagnose what's going on, and it's not spent in actually addressing and resolving employee issues. And so an important piece is setting up a process that when that really critical human face-to-face time happens, both people are set up to get the most support and value out of that. And then for the set of managers that are not really doing any of this to begin with, whether they're too busy or it's not in their management styles, for them, what I've found is, one, make sure that you have that very clear process, very easy process that's available to them. And typically that gets your most well-intentioned managers to be some level of active. For the remaining group, you might just have to supersede those teams. So yeah, I know I have 80% of my teams have pretty good internal feedback cycles. I can feel confident. For the rest of them, there might have to be more direct intervention from the HR level.
Mm-hmm. And I think that would go normal and typical anyway, but what we're talking about is providing your managers with the information they need in such a timely manner. Not, hey, 6 months ago when we were all going through this, did y'all know? We're talking about within a matter of days being able to provide details about the areas in which people are struggling beyond. I mean, we can all make some assumptions right now about the areas in which we're struggling, but there's also things that we don't have. We don't know about in regards to performance when more of us and our teams are being asked to do more with less attention span, less confidence, less people, less resources. We talked to a friend just yesterday, and she has 3 small children at home now with her while she has a very, very big responsibility. So how might what I'd really love to hear is maybe some examples or case studies about how your clients are using this right now, and maybe some things to avoid. So sorry, 2 questions again. How are they using it right now? And how can you avoid asking the wrong questions during a time of crisis?
Yeah. So to the first piece, that is a lot of the free tool set that we've just rolled out. So we already have an understanding of the high level. We want to understand how employees feel the COVID-19 response is going, and how they're specifically being impacted. And for most organizations, we want to know how the transition to remote is going. So the way that we see a lot of our clients use it is they are utilizing those pre-built workflows as the first step in the process. So I know that I'm going to get high quality feedback on, do people have the right communication tools now that they've got remote? How are they dealing with it emotionally? Do they feel like they understand how to do their job, or are things still chaotic? And that's your starting point. Based off of what you hear on that feedback, then we see our clients start to dive in on the individual specific areas that are relevant to each of their teams. And sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Oh gosh, I have no idea now. That was a really good answer. I think the other one are the pitfalls for communication, the pitfalls for communicating out, what to avoid, and then the pitfalls and the mistakes that people are making about, inbound, asking their employees in the middle of this. What are those mistakes that, whether they use technology or not, what are the mistakes that companies are making?
At a high level, falls into a couple of buckets. Being intentionally withholding or not honest, unintentionally not giving all the facts by siloing information, creating misinformation or confusion by not having a central source of information. So you've kind of given certain pieces of information as it's become relevant, as it's come to your mind, you've communicated out to other members of your team or your managers, and you don't know who has what piece of information. Now they're all playing a game of telephone. And not confirming that your messages have been heard. So assuming that because I sent the email, everyone knows this.
Yeah.
I think that is probably the biggest.
I know I make that mistake every day. What? We talked about that. What? Yeah. I sent an email. and that's not fair. That's really not fair for any of us. And yet we don't have a lot of time to repeat our message. We have good intentions, but how many times can I say over and over again when I've got other work to do? So will you tell me again that last piece about, it's really important to just repeat what you said, because you said it brilliantly.
The piece about knowing that it's critical to know if your message has been heard.
Yes.
Yeah. So one thing that really helps here is having a central fact sheet, central repository. And so you don't then need to be spending time reaching back out and be like, hey, did you get my message? Did you hear my email? Instead, it's just a regular check-in of like, hey, I wanted to make sure everyone heard this message that lives here. You can see everything that we're communicating right here. And it's kept clear in your leaders' minds, and employees know always where that communication is going to live. Even if they think they've missed something, they know where to go.
That's very valuable. That's very valuable. What about the questions that we should be asking our employees, and in that survey etiquette and what's appropriate? You know, I don't really want to answer a question, how you doing today? How are you? It's sort of inappropriate at this point to just, you know, push out, you know, hope you're happy today, you know, kind of communications. What's your feedback on a best practice for, you know, the right questions right now?
This is something that's kind of always the case, but especially right now. You see a lot of survey drop off when people hit a question that's gonna take them time to think about. So that might be a question that's like, how are you feeling? And it's like, okay, you really want me to like sit and do a self-analysis right now? Or if it's a question that's like, okay, I need to go and check my email and find the answer to this, that's where you see huge drop off. So the questions that you need to be asking right now are things that are, one, immediately important to the employee's life at this minute. Two, something where they understand how answering it is going to result in something positive. And three, is something that they're able to answer without having to put a lot of thought into it. If you need to have those discussions where you have that like bigger deep dive, where you are not asking the questions that are at top of mind, schedule face-to-face time for that.
That's really valuable. That's really valuable. You know, one of the things that we promised with our time today was to focus in on how to create that rally effect, you know, that effect of getting your folks, making sure that they know you as their employer are there for them, but also supporting them in aligning with the mission of we're all in this together, aligning with the goal of supporting one another through this crisis, no matter what that looks like. How will this kind of two-way communication, timely communication, support that rally effect?
Yeah. So it goes around this idea of like building an us mentality. This is not something you can fake or that you can like BS with platitudes about, hey, we care for each other. It's something that has to be shown over an extended period of time. So it's not like hey, I'm giving you a one-time bonus or whatever.
I put up a poster.
Yeah, like wash your hands.
Right.
It has to be a ongoing show that this is something that we are in together, while you still maintain that differentiation of like, it's not the employee's job to solve the financial issues of the company, but they're being kept in the loop of what's going on. No one at any time should feel like they are not part of the updating process. If people feel like they're left out of the updates that are happening, then you're going to lose any of that rally effect because now they're not part of the team anymore. The like flip side and big opportunity here is that I think the most successful companies in the next couple of years are going to be the ones that use this moment to define themselves, to become known as the organization that has empathy, that actually cares for its people, doesn't just say it, that is open, that's honest. And then when you are able to create that kind of like true culture and not just blank messaging, then you're not fighting the crisis by yourself purely at like a leadership level. You have a whole team that is telling a story together. And that's going to help you bounce back the quickest and take advantage of the big reset that's happening.
Yeah. I think that's really valid feedback. And regardless of how folks on the call are going to start communicating, one of the things that you had mentioned that I think that is particularly valuable is just because I think by necessity, a lot of us are communicating to our managers, who are then expected to communicate to their people, who in turn, and therein lies where the dominoes cannot fall all the way down. The cascading effect is not going to be what we need it to be without a systematic methodology for communication. And that's what you're talking about here. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that we see a lot of well-intentioned companies do is the manager level, the middle management level doesn't have the same messaging. They're not telling the same story. So they may be all telling a good story, but then at the employee level, there is no group clarity.
Yep.
That means when you're communicating with your customers, when the company is being perceived externally, there's not one single identity.
What do you mean there's not single? Tell me a little bit more about that.
So the
employee
employee voice.
Time? I think we've got about 5, maybe 10 more minutes max.
I'll get through this one quickly then. So the employee voice is always important, right? But it's especially important during crisis. Voices are amplified on social media right now. Mistakes, missteps, misinformation, all that can blow up and spiral very, very quickly. And so you want everyone to have the same understanding. And so when they're having their communications, whether that's employees talking to one another, whether that's people talking to their friends about what's going on at their company, whether that's posts on social media, communication to clients, it's the same messages that are being delivered. Because as soon as you start having a big split, you don't know what's going to take off and have a mind of its own.
Yeah. And we know that communication is difficult at this time anyway. So one little miscommunication and it can just spiral into something terrible. And what I'm hearing is with the right back and forth communication, with an open channel, then HR can get the pulse, can see where perhaps the messaging is going awry and address it in a timely manner.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're at that moment where there's this shared understanding, shared empathy. That's the base that you can build those communications off of.
So what did I miss, or what did we miss? What have we not covered that we want people to make sure that they can take away from this in regards to making sure that there's two-way communication and making sure they're managing that feedback well and responding quickly and timely? What have we not covered that we want to make sure we drive home in regards to creating that rallying effect?
We talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but what I always stress to our clients is understand what empathy means for your organization. There are like these basic ideals that we believe are kind of universally important in terms of like people should feel heard, they should be kept in the loop, it should be an ongoing conversation, but it is going to differ based off of your specific teams, the cultures that you've built. And it's important to spend some time understanding what empathy and understanding communication means. One communication style, like very emotive styles, are effective at some companies, and at other companies, if you try and use that same style, it's going to read as like something totally fake.
Fake, yeah.
So understand what it means to be open and understanding. At certain companies, the expectation for speed is a little bit different as well. So just really keep notes of like, what is a communication style that's going to hit home? What is the iteration speed that's going to be really important? And how do I make, not even how do I make, but how do I communicate in a way that's real? And I'm not just like trying to stick to these predefined plans. Take the time to really think about it.
That's really helpful. That's really helpful. You know, you might have done this a few times, haven't you? Figured out this whole survey feedback thing.
That's right. Yeah. And in my previous life at Deloitte, I did some work on a special ops team where the job was to kind of rapidly respond to and resolve crisis issues.
It's amazing how sometimes our past careers set us up for something even more valuable or important or meaningful in our life. So I want to share with people how they can get in touch with you. And let me share my screen real quick. and also make sure that folks know how to take advantage of the free use of your tools. You guys, we've set up a page that can share with you exactly how to get in touch and how to, I think we have a white paper that you've shared, as well as information on the free use of your tools and how to make sure that they take advantage of that. You can see on the screen, it's turnkeycoachingsolutions.net/Weave. Free remote work and COVID-19 pulse tools for Kim. Weave's AI chatbot that gathers employee feedback and empathy. And I think that you've definitely made the case for the importance of employee feedback and communication and doing it authentically. Thank you for sharing all of these pieces with us, and I suspect that we'll be in touch further. I want to share with people also, in addition to Vivek's offer there, something I mentioned earlier about something that Turnkey Coaching Solutions is doing is we've gone out to our team and gathered our career coaches and our outplacement coaches and invited them to participate in our Name Your Own Price outplacement coaching services, as well as retained leaders services. That is actually something we're going to be talking about during our next summit at 12:45 Central with Özlem Saglu, and I hope you'll join us. But Vivek, leave us with your last minute tips for communicating effectively with your employees and using that feedback effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Have an ongoing conversation, not a one-off. Show that you are understanding the feedback and that it's a true back and forth by asking the right follow-ups, showing that you're being responsive, responding empathetically, whatever that means for your organization, and keep a consistent and timely set of updates and responses to what's happening. Like I mentioned before, this is an opportunity to define what your story as a company is, and having the right communication plan is what's going to drive that narrative.
My biggest takeaway is, even for us that have good communication skills and good communication plans, don't necessarily have the means to know whether the communication is well received or whether or not our good intentions are being properly communicated in the timely manner and cascaded down. And what you've shared with us is a way to have that done for free during this pandemic through your system. And so not only do they get the opportunity to have best practices, but if an organization knows that right now they are limited in resources and limited in their capacity to do what they know must be done in the way of communicating effectively and getting that message quickly, and then listening to their employees, you've provided them with a means to do that. So I really thank you. Thank you for your expertise, and thank you for joining us and sharing your offer so graciously.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really, really passionate about this. We hope that it helps you. I would love to hear from any of you. My email is vivek@weave.ai.
Very brave, giving your email out. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Vivek. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.